My name is Jake, and I drive a hazmat truck for a living. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well. Well enough that I owned my own house at 35, something most guys my age couldn't say. The long hauls across state lines meant days away from home, but the money was good, and I thought I was building something solid for my future family. That's where Celeste came in. I met her in 2014 at a friend's barbecue. She was stunning, the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. Auburn hair, green eyes, and a confidence that drew me in like a moth to flame. She worked in marketing, dressed impeccably, and had this way of making you feel like the most important person in the world when she focused on you. We hit it off immediately. Within 6 months, she'd moved into my house, the 3-bedroom colonial I'd saved for years to buy. My best friend Caleb helped us move her stuff. He'd been my buddy since we were kids, always reliable, always there when I needed him. He was my best man when Celeste and I got married in 2016. "You're a lucky bastard," he'd said at my bachelor party, raising his beer. "She's way out of your league." I laughed it off then. Caleb always had a way of joking that stung a little. By 2017, Celeste was pushing hard for a baby. She'd leave pregnancy test boxes on the bathroom counter, circle baby furniture and catalogs, and make comments about my biological clock, even though I was the man. When she got pregnant in 2018, I was nervous but excited. Lucas was born in early 2019, and holding my son for the first time was the most incredible moment of my life. That's when everything started to change. The sleepless nights, the crying, the diapers. It was all normal new parent stuff. But Celeste seemed to resent how much I had to travel. She'd grown accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and my hazmat driving provided that, but it meant being away for 3 to 4 days at a stretch. "Lucas needs his father here," she'd say when I'd get my route assignments. "Other dads don't disappear for half the week." So I made a sacrifice. I talked to my dispatcher and switched to shorter regional routes. The pay cut was significant, about 30%, but I thought it was worth it to be home more. I thought Celeste would appreciate the gesture. Instead, she seemed to grow more critical. Nothing I did was right. The house wasn't clean enough. I wasn't helping enough with Lucas. I wasn't making enough money. The complaints never stopped. My older brother Adam noticed it during a family dinner when Lucas was about 2. "When did she start treating you like an employee?" he asked me quietly in the kitchen as we cleaned dishes. "What do you mean?" "Jake, I've been watching her boss you around all night. That's not how partners treat each other." I defended her, of course. She was stressed with a toddler, I said. Working mothers had it tough, all the usual excuses. But Adam's words stuck with me. Through it all, Caleb remained a constant presence. He'd come by to help with yard work, fix things around the house, or just hang out and watch games. Celeste always seemed more relaxed when he was around, more like the woman I'd fallen in love with. "Thank God for Caleb," she'd say. "At least one of you men knows how to be helpful." The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October 2023. I'd been on a 4-day haul to Atlanta and back, hauling chemical waste for proper disposal. It was exhausting work. The constant vigilance required when transporting hazardous materials, the paperwork, the inspections. I was running behind schedule due to a mandatory rest period, and I missed Lucas's school Halloween parade. When I walked through the door at 9 p.m., Celeste was waiting. "He kept asking where his daddy was," she said, not even greeting me. "All the other kids had their fathers there." "I'm sorry, the DOT requirements—" "I don't want to hear about your job requirements, Jake. Other fathers manage to prioritize their children." I was exhausted, hungry, and fed up. "Other fathers don't make the money I make. This house, your car, Lucas's private school, that all comes from those job requirements. Money isn't everything. Marcus Thompson's dad was there, and he coaches Lucas's soccer team. Brian Miller's dad helps with school projects. What do? You disappear in that stupid truck and act like you're some kind of hero. I'm providing for this family." "Providing?" She laughed bitterly. "You know what real providing looks like? It looks like being present. It looks like being the kind of man a woman can actually depend on." The argument escalated quickly. She was screaming about how I was selfish, how I cared more about my truck than my family. I was shouting back about sacrifices and responsibility. We were both saying things we couldn't take back. That's when Lucas appeared at the top of the stairs in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Why are you fighting?" he asked, in that small, scared voice that breaks every parent's heart. Celeste looked at him, then back at me, and something in her face changed. The anger transformed into something colder, more desperate. "Go back to bed, honey," she said to Lucas. "Mommy and Daddy are just talking." But Lucas didn't move. He stood there, watching us with those big eyes that looked so much like mine. That's when Celeste said it. "Maybe if you were more like other fathers, Lucas would have a better role model. I only married you because I thought he was yours anyway." The words hung in the air like smoke from a chemical spill. Toxic, choking, impossible to ignore. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas was still standing there, old enough to understand that something terrible had just been said, but too young to fully grasp what. Celeste's face went white as she realized what had slipped out. "Jake, But I was already moving, scooping Lucas up and carrying him back to his room. "Come on, buddy," I said, my voice somehow steady. "Let's get you back to bed." I tucked him in, read him a quick story, and kissed his forehead. His hair smelled like the strawberry shampoo Celeste always used on him. When I looked at his face in the dim nightlight, I saw my own features reflected back. The same nose, the same stubborn cow lick, the same way of frowning when thinking hard. "Daddy?" he whispered. "Yeah, buddy. Are you and Mommy getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the chest. "Why would you ask that?" "Tommy's parents got divorced, and they used to fight a lot. Now he has 2 houses." I smoothed his hair back. "Don't worry about that right now, just go to sleep, okay?" When I came back downstairs, Celeste was sitting on the couch, her head in her hands. "I didn't mean it," she said without looking up. "It came out wrong." "Did it?" "Jake, please, I was angry. People say stupid things when they're angry. But I was already thinking about the timeline." Lucas was born in early 2019. We'd been married since 2016, together since 2014. If what she'd said was true, even partially true, then the math got very complicated very quickly. "We need to talk," I said, "but not tonight, not with Lucas upstairs." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Celeste pretended to sleep beside me. For the first time in years, I really looked at my marriage and didn't like what I saw. The criticism, the distance, the way she seemed happier when I wasn't around. And Caleb, always helpful, always there, always making jokes about how lucky I was. The next morning, I called in sick to work and made an appointment with an attorney. Patricia Goldstein came highly recommended as someone who specialized in complex divorces. Her office was downtown, sleek and professional, with the kind of confidence that costs $400 an hour. "Tell me what happened," she said, leaning back in her leather chair. I laid out the whole story, the argument, the slip about Lucas, my growing suspicions. She listened without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "First things first," she said when I finished. "You need a paternity test. Everything else is secondary until we know that. I'm pretty sure he's mine. He looks just like me. Genetics can be funny, and even if he is yours biologically, we need documentation. Courts like documentation." She outlined a 3-step plan: establish paternity, protect my financial assets, and gather evidence of any infidelity. It was clinical, methodical, and expensive, but I could see the logic. "One more thing," she said as I was leaving. "Don't confront your wife or your friend yet. Gather information first. People make stupid decisions when they're panicking." The paternity test was easier than I'd expected. I took Lucas out for dinner at our favorite diner on Saturday, and while he was distracted by his chicken nuggets, I swabbed the inside of his cheek with the kit Patricia had given me. He thought it was a game. "What's that for, Daddy?" "Just checking to make sure you're healthy, buddy." The results took 3 days. 99.99% probability of paternity. Relief flooded through me so strongly I had to sit down. Whatever else was happening, Lucas was mine. But that relief was quickly replaced by a cold fury. If Celeste had been unsure about paternity, it meant she'd been with someone else around the time of conception, someone she thought might be Lucas's father. I started paying attention in ways I never had before. Celeste's phone was always face down now. She took calls in other rooms. She'd developed a sudden interest in working late and going out with girlfriends I'd never met. When I asked about her day, her answers were vague and evasive. One evening, while she was in the shower, I noticed she'd left her iPad on the kitchen counter. It was logged into her iMessage account. I knew I was crossing a line, but I opened it anyway. What I found made my blood turn to ice. Messages with Caleb going back months. Not just friendly conversation, intimate messages that made it clear they'd been together recently. The timestamps showed conversations happening while I was on the road, sometimes while I was talking to Celeste on the phone from truck stops. Jake's leaving for Atlanta tomorrow. Come over after 8. I can't stop thinking about last night. We need to be more careful. He almost caught us at the marina. I screenshotted everything, my hands shaking. There were hundreds of messages. The earliest ones I could find dated back to 2019, right around the time Lucas was born. My best friend since childhood, my wife, my goddamn house. The financial investigation was almost as devastating. Patricia's forensic accountant found that Celeste had been withdrawing cash during my long hauls, $28,000 over the past 2 years. There were charges on a credit card I didn't know existed, hotels, restaurants, a weekend trip to the mountains, all while I was making sacrifices to be home more. She's been financing her affair with your money, Patricia said bluntly. That's going to play very well in court. I decided to confront Caleb first. Part of me wanted to understand how someone I'd trusted for 30 years could betray me like this. Part of me wanted to give him a chance to come clean. I called him on a Saturday morning and asked if he wanted to check out a boat that was for sale at the marina. He'd been talking about buying a fishing boat for years, so it seemed natural. You thinking about getting back into fishing? He asked as we walked down the dock. Maybe. Been thinking I need a hobby that doesn't involve being away from home. He laughed. Smart man, family first, right? We found a quiet spot at the end of the dock, overlooking the water. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots. I need you to explain this to me, I said quietly. The color drained from his face. For a moment he looked like he might deny it, but then his shoulders sagged. Shit, Jake, how long have you known? How long has it been going on? He looked out at the water. It started a few months after you two started dating. She was lonely when you were on the road and I was available. It just happened. It just happened? For 5 years? We tried to stop multiple times, but there's something between us, man. I'm sorry. Were you unsure about Lucas's paternity? His silence was answer enough. Jesus Christ, Caleb, you let me raise a child thinking he might not be mine? We didn't know for sure, and you love that kid. It wouldn't have changed anything. I stood up, fighting the urge to push him into the water. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from my family. You're going to stay away from my house. If I see you anywhere near Lucas, if you contact Celeste, if you so much as drive down my street, I'm going to send these messages to your boss, your parents, and every mutual friend we have. Understood? He nodded miserably. I'm also going to need you to write a statement admitting to the affair. My lawyer will be in touch. I left him sitting there and drove home, adrenaline coursing through my system. One down, one to go. I waited until Lucas was asleep before confronting Celeste. She was in the living room, watching some reality show on TV, a glass of wine in her hand. She looked beautiful and relaxed, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. I placed a manila folder on the coffee table and sat across from her. What's this? She asked, muting the TV. Open it. She did, and I watched her face change as she saw the printed screenshots, the financial records, the timeline of lies. She went through the papers twice, as if hoping they'd somehow change. Jake, I can explain. I don't want explanations. I want you to listen. She set the papers down with shaking hands. First, Lucas is my son. I have the paternity test to prove it. Second, I know about the money you've been stealing. Third, I know about Caleb. I've already dealt with him. She started crying then, mascara running down her cheeks. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. For years. I was lonely, Jake. You were always gone, and Caleb was there, and he understood me in ways that you... Stop. I held up a hand. I don't want to hear about how this is my fault. She shifted tactics, as I'd known she would. The tears stopped, replaced by that familiar anger. So what? You're going to throw away 5 years of marriage over a mistake? 5 years of marriage? Try 5 years of lies. She stood up and moved toward me, her voice taking on a seductive tone. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll stop seeing him. I'll be better. When that didn't work, she tried a different approach, moving closer, her hand reaching for my chest. I know you still want me, Jake. We can start over. I'll make it up to you. I stepped back. Don't. That's when the real Celeste emerged. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so perfect? You were never here. You chose that stupid truck over your family every single day. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the divorce papers Patricia had prepared. You have 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. I've booked you a room at the Marriott Extended Stay. The finances have been separated. The house is mine. It was mine before we got married, and it'll be mine after. She stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You can't do this. I have rights. Yes, I can. And yes, you do. Your lawyer can explain them to you. What about Lucas? What about him? He's my son, and he's staying with me. You'll have visitation, assuming you can prove you're stable enough to be around him. That's when she finally understood. For 5 years, she'd held all the cards in our relationship. She was the beautiful one, the one other men wanted. She'd used that power to manipulate and control me, knowing I'd never leave because I loved her too much. But now the power had shifted. I had evidence, money, and the law on my side. Most importantly, I had Lucas. You bastard, she whispered. I'm not the one who cheated. I'm not the one who stole money. I'm not the one who destroyed this family. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then turned back one more time. You'll regret this, Jake. You'll never find anyone else who'll put up with you. After she left, I sat in the quiet house for a long time. Upstairs, Lucas was sleeping peacefully, unaware that his world had just changed forever. I'd protected him from the worst of it, but there would be difficult conversations ahead. For now, though, I just felt empty. 5 years of my life, gone. My best friend, gone. My marriage, gone. But for the first time in years, I also felt something else. Relief. The divorce proceedings began in earnest after Celeste hired her own attorney, a sharp woman named Rebecca Martinez who specialized in protecting women's interests in divorce. Her strategy became clear quickly. Paint me as an absent father who cared more about work than family, and argue that Lucas needed his mother's primary care. Patricia was ready for this approach. They're going to argue that truck driving makes you unsuitable for primary custody, she warned me. We need to show the court that you've been the stable, consistent parent. We gathered evidence methodically. School records showing I'd attended every parent-teacher conference, medical records proving I'd taken Lucas to most of his doctor's appointments, photos of camping trips and soccer games. My employer provided a letter explaining how I'd voluntarily switched to shorter regional routes to be home more, costing myself significant income. The temporary custody hearing was held on a gray December morning. Celeste arrived looking perfectly put together in a conservative navy suit, playing the role of grieving mother. Her lawyer painted a picture of a woman struggling to hold her family together while her husband disappeared for days at a time. My client has been the primary caregiver for Lucas since birth, Martinez argued. While Mr. Thompson was pursuing a dangerous career that kept him away from home for days at a stretch, Mrs. Thompson was managing the household, caring for their son, and trying to maintain some semblance of family stability. When it was Patricia's turn, she calmly destroyed that narrative. Your Honor, the evidence shows that Mr. Thompson has been consistently present in his son's life, despite the demands of his career. These are the sign-in sheets from Lucas's school showing Mr. Thompson attended every significant event he wasn't prevented from attending by work. These are medical records showing Mr. Thompson took Lucas to 73% of his medical appointments. These are photographs documenting camping trips, fishing expeditions, soccer coaching, and daily activities. She then presented the financial evidence. While Mr. Thompson was working to provide for his family and voluntarily reducing his income to be home more, Mrs. Thompson was systematically stealing money from their joint accounts to finance an extramarital affair. She withdrew $28,000 in cash over 2 years and racked up $16,000 in secret credit card debt on hotels and restaurants with her paramour. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, listened to both sides without expression. When the lawyers finished their presentations, she addressed us directly. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, I want you both to understand that this court's primary concern is the best interests of your child. Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting temporary primary custody to Mr. Thompson, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Thompson pending a full investigation by a court-appointed guardian ad litem." Celeste looked like she'd been slapped. Her lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear, but the judge was already moving on to the next case. Outside the courthouse, Celeste confronted me. "This isn't over," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "I'm his mother. No court is going to keep me from my son." "No one's keeping you from him. You just have to prove you're stable enough to be trusted with him." "Stable? I'm not the one who hired a private investigator to spy on his own family. I didn't spy on anyone. I just stopped ignoring what was right in front of me." Over the next few months, I watched Celeste's life fall apart with a mixture of sadness and vindication. Without my income to support her lifestyle, she couldn't afford her apartment and had to move back in with her parents. Her job at the marketing firm ended. Whether she was fired or quit, I never found out. Caleb, true to his word, had disappeared from our lives. I heard through mutual friends that he'd moved to another state, but I didn't care enough to find out where. Celeste's supervised visits with Lucas were awkward and painful. She'd show up late, sometimes obviously hungover, and spend the time pumping him for information about me or making inappropriate comments about our divorce. "Mommy made some mistakes," she told him during one visit, with the court-appointed supervisor listening. "But Daddy made mistakes too. Big people problems are complicated." Lucas, now 4 and smart enough to sense tension, began having nightmares. Some nights he'd wake up crying, asking why Mommy didn't live with us anymore. I'd hold him and try to explain in terms a child could understand, but how do you tell a 4-year-old that his mother chose another man over his family? Dr. Sarah Chen, the child psychologist the court had assigned, helped immensely. She worked with Lucas on processing the changes in his life and helped me understand how to support him through the transition. "Children are remarkably resilient," she told me after one of Lucas's sessions, "but they need consistency and honesty. You're doing well by keeping his routine stable and not speaking negatively about his mother in front of him. It's hard sometimes, especially when she shows up late or misses visits entirely." "I know, but Lucas is watching how you handle this situation. He's learning from you how to deal with disappointment and conflict." Celeste missed 3 visits in a row in February, each time with increasingly flimsy excuses. The final straw came when she showed up to a visit obviously intoxicated. The supervisor immediately ended the session and filed a report with the court. 2 days later, I got a call from Celeste's mother. "She's in the hospital," Margaret said, her voice thick with tears. She tried to hurt herself, Jake. They have her on a 72-hour hold." I felt a complex mix of emotions: anger at what she'd put Lucas through, sadness for the woman I'd once loved, and relief that maybe now she'd get the help she needed. "Is she going to be okay?" "I don't know. She's been drinking heavily since the divorce started. She lost her job, and she's been saying some pretty scary things about not wanting to live anymore." "What do you need from me?" There was a long pause. "She needs help, Jake. Real help. And I think I owe you an apology." We blamed you for a lot of things over the years, but seeing her like this, we understand now that there were problems we didn't see. Celeste spent 2 weeks in inpatient psychiatric care, followed by 6 months in a residential treatment program. During that time, she had no contact with Lucas except for supervised phone calls once a week. The calls were difficult at first. She'd cry and make promises she couldn't keep, which left Lucas confused and upset. But gradually, as her treatment progressed, the calls became more stable. She'd ask about school, his friends, what books he was reading. I found myself in an unexpected position, hoping for her recovery, not for my sake, but for Lucas's. Whatever else she was still his mother, and he deserved to have a relationship with her if she could get healthy. The financial settlement was finalized while she was in treatment. I kept the house, the truck, and primary custody. She got a small monthly support payment and structured visitation once she completed her program. The money she'd stolen was to be paid back in small monthly installments. It would take years, but Patricia said it was better than nothing. By the fall, Celeste had completed her program and was living in a small apartment across town. She'd found a job as a receptionist at a dental office, not the glamorous marketing career she'd had before, but steady work. More importantly, she'd been sober for 6 months and was attending regular therapy sessions. Her first unsupervised visit with Lucas was on a Saturday afternoon in October, almost a year after that terrible argument that had started everything. I was nervous as I watched them walk to her car together. He was chattering about school and soccer, and she was listening with the kind of focused attention I remembered from the early days of our relationship. They went to the park and got ice cream, nothing fancy. When she brought him home, Lucas was happy but not overly excited, a good sign that the visit had been normal and age-appropriate. "How did it go?" I asked Celeste quietly while Lucas went inside to use the bathroom. "Good. He's grown so much." She paused, looking at her hands. "I know I can't undo the damage I did, to him, to you, to our family. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be better." "I can see that, and Lucas needs you to be better." "I got a letter from Caleb," she said suddenly. "He's married now, living in Oregon. He said to tell you he's sorry." I shrugged. "That's between him and his conscience." Are you seeing anyone?" It was a fair question, but I wasn't ready to answer it. "My focus is on Lucas right now." She nodded. "He talks about you a lot. How you help with his homework, how you coach his soccer team. He's proud of you." That meant more to me than she probably realized. After that, our new normal has settled into place. Celeste sees Lucas every other weekend and one evening during the week. She's maintained her sobriety and her job, and while we'll never be friends, we've learned to co-parent effectively. She even paid back about a third of the money she stole, sending small checks every month with apologetic notes. I switched to a local route permanently, taking a significant pay cut but gaining something more valuable: time with my son. I coach his Little League team, help with homework every night, and tuck him in with stories about brave truck drivers who save the day. Lucas, now 6, has adapted well to having 2 homes. He doesn't ask about the divorce anymore, accepting it as a fact of life the way children do. Sometimes he mentions wanting us all to live together again, but without the desperate sadness that used to break my heart. A few months ago, I started dating someone, Sarah, a teacher at Lucas's school. It's moving slowly, and Lucas likes her, which feels like a small miracle. She knows about the divorce, about the affair, about all of it, and she's still here. That seems like progress. The house feels different now, lighter somehow. I've redecorated the bedroom, painted the living room, and built Lucas a treehouse in the backyard. It's still the same house I bought before I got married, but it feels like mine again in ways it hadn't for years. Last week, Lucas came home from school excited about a project where he had to draw his family and write about what makes them special. He drew me in my truck driver uniform with a big smile, Celeste in her new apartment with flowers — she's taken up gardening — and himself in the middle holding both our hands. At the bottom, in his careful first-grade handwriting, he wrote, "My dad makes sure I have everything I need." Looking at that drawing, thinking about everything we've been through, I realized he was right. Not everything I wanted, maybe, but everything he needed. Stability, love, honesty, and a father who shows up. That's enough. That's more than enough. Sometimes I see Caleb's parents around town, and they nod politely, but don't try to talk. I wonder if they know what their son did, if they ever think about the friendship that died along with my marriage. But mostly, I don't think about him at all anymore. The anger has faded into indifference, which feels like its own kind of victory. The hazmat truck still sits in my driveway every night, a reminder of choices made and prices paid. But now it's just a vehicle that gets me from point A to point B, not the thing that supposedly destroyed my family. I know the truth now. My family was destroyed by lies and betrayal and cowardice, not by honest work that put food on the table. These days, when Lucas asks what I do for a living, I tell him I transport dangerous materials safely so they don't hurt anyone. He thinks that makes me a superhero, and maybe, in his eyes, it does. That's the only opinion that matters anymore.